We are back with the 6th episode of My Hero Academia Season 7. After last week's episode saw the heroes plan to lure out All For One in the beginning of the final war, this episode shows how the heroes put their plan together, as well as phase 2 of their assault against All For One and Shigaraki. Before we begin, if you like this video and want to see more like it, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel as it really helps out. My Hero Academia is owned by Kohei Horikoshi, Shueisha, and Studio Bones. Please support the official release when you can. The episode starts out a few days before the final war began, and Class 1A was approached by All Might, Tsukauchi, and Nezu to tell them about their plan of attack. All Might says that he'll have Aoyama and his parents get in contact with All For One to lure him out into the open. After deducing that All For One probably has a way to find out if Aoyama and his parents are lying to him, All Might decides that he'll have Shinso use his brainwash quirk on Aoyama and his parents, so to All For One, it'll seem like they're telling the truth. But then the issue arises in the situation of the heroes being detected if they gather in large numbers. The remedy for this is Monoma, who Aizawa has copied the quirk of Kurogiri, aka Obara Shirakumo. There's then a montage of Shinso using his brainwash quirk on Aoyama and his parents to force him to contact All For One, without All For One detecting any ill will. We then pick up right where last week's episode left off, with all the heroes entering through the portals that Monoma created by copying Kurogiri's quirk. There's a few small conflicts with the heroes and villains, including Dabi against Todoroki and Endeavor, while All Might, who is watching from a control panel, orders that it's time to activate Operation Troy. Suddenly, multiple cages sprout up from the ground and encapsulate all the villains. The cages start to mobilize, and Monoma opens more portals for the cages to go through, splitting up the villains. All For One quickly realizes that the heroes are trying to split up the villains and starts to break out of the cages. However, the heroes plan for this and counterattack to push the villains back into the cages. The rest of the heroes then push the cages into their respective portals and enter in themselves. Deku and Bakugo are pushing a portal when suddenly Deku is pulled into a different portal than the one he was meant to enter, making him end up in a different location. Now that the villains are all split up among different locations with different heroes pitted against them, All Might says the heroes will now enter phase 2 of their plan. Endeavor, Hawks, and some other heroes are transported with All For One to Gunga and engage in combat against the Demon Lord. Hawks targets All For One's helmet and deduces that this helmet is a source of All For One's life support system. All For One then starts taunting Endeavor, calling him cruel for splitting up his forces. All For One says Endeavor is a coward for forcing his youngest and eldest sons to settle his score. We then see Kamino near the All Might statue, where Toya and Shoto are about to have their final battle. Cut to the sky above Yue, which has been turned into a flying fortress. Shigaraki is matched up against Bakugo, Mirko, Best Jeanist, Edgeshot, Tamaki, and Nejire. Bakugo immediately tells Best Jeanist that their plan has already been compromised as Deku was taken away to another location. We then cut to Okuto Island, where Deku ended up after being pulled through the wrong portal. He's there with Uraraka and Asui, who are matched up against Himiko Toga. Back at the floating Yue, Mirko decides that even though their plan of having Deku matched up against Shigaraki has failed, all they can do now is try to take him down on their own. Shigaraki tries using Decay, but a piece of the floor shoots up and pushes Shigaraki into an electric barrier, shocking him. He realizes this must be a measure the heroes implemented to fight against his Decay quirk. We then see the inner workings of the floating Yue, and it's shown that the flooring is constantly being restored by Hatsume along with other support corps students, and Momo using her creation quirk to constantly produce more. It's also shown that the electric barrier is being maintained by multiple students, including Kaminari. Best Jeanist says that the floating Yue, the Sky Coffin, was created specifically to take down Shigaraki. As the heroes on the surface of the Sky Coffin continue to engage Shigaraki, Shigaraki tries using a shockwave quirk but realizes he's unable to, due to both Aizawa and Monoma using Erasure on him nearby. Mirko then attacks Shigaraki, who evades. We then see Shigaraki attacking Mirko with what seems to be an amalgamation of hands, but it isn't a quirk. He slams his attack right down on Mirko and then begins to taunt Aizawa. And that brings us to the end of the episode. The preview for next week's episode shows the continuation of the fight against Shigaraki on the Sky Coffin, as well as Deku's battle against Toga and a certain confession. Overall, this was a really great episode to start off the final war arc. The animation was great, the soundtrack was great, and I can't wait to see how the upcoming fights in the war are adapted from the manga. This episode gets an 8.5 out of 10. But that is the end of my recap/review of this week's episode of My Hero Academia Season 7. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for watching, and that's all from me.